Welcome to You've Only Come to Hear United. We're going to go through some of the talking points around United at the moment. I haven't done one of these for a while. I'm not going to lie, I'm not really wanting to talk about us for a bit because we've just been that dreadful, really. And I think that's where we're going to start too, just how poor we've been. Is this possibly the most difficult time in the last 30 years, or the Premier League era, I guess, to watch Manchester United? And I think it is. I think we've got to a point where we're watching, uninspiring performance after uninspiring performance, even if it's just for a first half. We're still not scoring enough goals. There's not a lot of flair on display. We're really hoping for the odd moment here and there to carry us through, but it's early days for Ruben Amorim, and I'm definitely not advocating for him to go or anything like that, but it's got to get better than this. I know it's early, but we want to see some flair, we want to see some attacking passion, and people will say we've not got the players for it, but I think little things, just gambling a little bit more, get Garnacho on the wing. I don't know what Dalot's doing on the left, and that's going to be the next point we'll address, but you need those wide areas to have impactful players. Are they wing backs? Are they wingers? Well, even if the wing backs, there's a reason the wing backs are not full backs. They need to carry more of an attacking threat, and we're not really getting that. And I think that really just transitions on into the next question. Could Diego Dalot ultimately be the hill that Amorim dies on? If he carries on like this, as early as it is, it could absolutely be the hill that he dies on. You can't have any of your fullbacks offering nothing in this system. You can't. When Garnacho came on in the last game against Leicester and impacted things, he ended up taking up the mantle of being that wide outlet. And that isn't really what he was meant to do. He was meant to be sort of the inside forward, or number 10, or however you want to look at those two people who are playing in behind the striker at the moment. That wasn't really what Dalot was meant to be doing, as far as we've known so far from the way Amroim sets up his team. But that was the job he took on, and it was really effective for us. I'd just use him as wing back at the moment. I really would happily have. I don't mind Patrick Dorgu playing on the right hand side. I was incredulous about it when I saw the lineup, but that wasn't so much for Dorgu on the right. It was the fact that we've brought in someone who can play left back, and yet we're still playing Diego Dalot on the left back, who offers nothing there. He really doesn't. I mean, if I'm clutching at straws, he does some really good running off the ball. He can get into some good positions, but on the ball, he doesn't offer us anything. He had the one game against Liverpool where I thought maybe we can use him there, and he absolutely rinsed Trent Alexander-Arnold, but I don't think that really counts for too much, to be honest, because we haven't seen him do the same against any other opposing right back. So yeah, that's really got to change going forwards. It can't carry on like this. And I think that leads on to asking, is Ruben Amorim overcomplicating things? And it does feel like he's going a little bit too pep about things at the moment. We're not quite in Mazraoui at the number 10 right now. We haven't kind of got that far through the looking glass. But nothing would surprise me at the moment. It really wouldn't, while he's tinkering and trying to sort things out. No amount of training can account for playing somebody out of position. That I don't think that's a good enough reason for. I mean, to give some context around this point, one of the suggestions was that he had been played on the right hand side because it was closer to Ruben Amorim on the touch line, and he could give him instructions and coaching through the half, essentially, because he'd only had like 3 training sessions leading up to the game. But listening to the Athletics Talk of the Devils podcast recently, I think it was Carl Anker on there suggested that this had been posed to Amorim, and Amorim pushed back and said no, that wasn't the reason. So yeah, it was utterly bizarre. And he comes off at half time, and Garnacho coming on, not obviously a like for like swap positionally, but Garnacho coming on did impact and change the game. So yeah, I think just with the wing back positions in particular, don't overcomplicate it. I know you want someone on you want them on their opposite foot. It's something that you like. I know I've heard it explained again on the Athletic that it was, there's something in the fact that if you've got somebody who is basically or essentially on their weaker foot, playing on what is for them the wrong side of the pitch, when they're attacking the box, they'll arrive and be able to potentially convert chances using their stronger foot easier. It just feels like such a loose reasoning and rationale behind it for me. just play your left-footed wing back on the left and your right-footed wing back on the right. Surely don't make life harder for yourself than it needs to be. We're already struggling to put round pegs in round holes in other parts of the pitch because we're so short on numbers and options. So this is an easy win now. You've got yourself a left back. Don't overcomplicate things. Now, I guess on a similar vein, one thing that you should get from having proper wing backs or wingers in those wide areas is better supply to our strikers. And I've been wondering, is it fair that our strikers are getting so much criticism at the moment? I've definitely done that myself too at different points throughout the season. But one thing I have maintained is they don't get the service. The arguments against that I've heard is, but they need to create chances for themselves. Fair enough. They absolutely do need to create chances for themselves. But that's only a portion of the time. Højlund's really coming for some really tough stick. He's like, 21 at the moment, I want to say, Højlund. You're looking at someone like Harry Kane at the same age. I think he wasn't on loan in the Championship right now. There's a lot of pressure on his shoulders, and he's feeding off scraps. And the same for Xerxes as well. There isn't a lot there to feed off. Performances all round can be better, but if they're missing chances, then you're going to go, they should be scoring more goals. In that respect, they're not putting the chances away. Well, Højlund's got, for example, quite a good conversion rate. I think they are getting too much stick. And I think that will diminish if we can sort out those wide areas. So I think that is going to be one of the key supply lines to them. And we just haven't got that sorted at all. You're not going to get a lot coming from Dalot. You're really not. You're not really, depending on who's on the right-hand side. If you've got Mazraoui out there, as great as Mazraoui is, and I think he's been exceptional for us this season, you're not going to get loads of attacking output from him in that respect either. Or at least that's how it's looking at the moment. So we're a bit more threatening when we've got Ahmad out there. But until next season, those options are limited. I definitely want to be trying to use Garnacho on the left as well. I think we just need more threat. We need more supply for the strikers, outside of, at the moment, it's really the number 10s, or when Ahmad plays at fullback, that seems to be the main lines of supply. One of the other ones, obviously, was Lisandro Martinez as well, from centre-back, who really started to contribute in an attacking sense, and now we've lost him for the rest of the season too, so we need all the attacking power that we can get. Now, another thing that I wanted to touch on today is looking at the impact of the overblown media coverage of players doing well elsewhere. And I think this is it's really not helping with the feeling around the club at the moment. People have got crazy excited about, people have got quite non-United fans very interested in Anthony picking up 2 back-to-back man of the match performances. You've got McTominay scoring for fun. Napoli, I say scoring for fun, it's a bit of an exaggeration, but he's doing well at Napoli, and he's scored again, I think, at last weekend. Rashford's obviously just gone to Villa, and I know people will be looking there for any sort of, moments of inspiration that they can use to say, oh look, that's different from United, as they've been doing with Jadon Sancho for most of the season, even though I think that when you dig a little bit deeper, the general consensus is that he's been largely underwhelming at Chelsea. Although you ask someone, your person on the street who doesn't follow United or Chelsea, you'd probably say, how's Sancho been doing? They go, oh, he's been doing quite well, hasn't he? Because that seems to be the narrative that's going round, and it's the narrative that non-United fans seem to want to peddle about our former players at the moment, just to stick the knife in a little bit more. And it doesn't help. It feeds more into this feeling around the club of how bad things are. And while that's true, it would be nice to see a bit more realism from people. We know we're not going to get that. It's just not going to happen. But yeah, it's just not a good sort of place to be at the moment, and this is adding to that. Another thing I wanted to touch on too is, while we've obviously got players elsewhere and apparently pulling up trees, one thing that we could do to help ourselves at the moment is blood more youngsters. And I've been wondering why Ruben Amorim so reluctant to blood youngsters. Now, the thing that a lot of people will say in this situation is, you don't want to put young players into an environment where your team's already struggling. It's not fair on them. You can't ask them to be the ones to sort of G the team up and pick them up. They need to ideally be coming into a situation where you can be on the bench, your team's 2 or 3-0 up, you can come on for 5 or 10 minutes. I get that, but the way our season's gone, I don't see where the pressure is, especially if they come on in the league, because you're not asking them to sort of save anything or be a saviour, because that's what people worry about too. It's like this: if they come in and do well, they're going to be seen as, they can be seen as the ones to be the shining light in something that's quite bleak. Yeah, they can. At the moment, the expectations are so low. You could probably put someone in for a bit and take them out and go and wanting to give them a taste, even if they did well. And you're always going to get clamour from some fans who are going to want to see them then have a run in the team. But we're doing that poor in the league. You could probably rotate a different youngster every week and just let them, have a go, see how they get on. It's a great chance to test them against, strong opposition ahead of next season. You can see maybe there's 1 or 2 of them who will really stand out and can do a job, and you can get them more involved in pre-season, knowing that they've had some league minutes. Outside of the academy, I think it's a great opportunity to give Aidan Heaven some minutes too, just to have someone come in who is a natural left footer, who can play centre back. He's going to look raw still. Hasn't particularly played much for Arsenal's first team. But with the injury to Lisandro Martinez, it'd be good to know that we might potentially have an able understudy there. But you're not going to know unless, they're given a chance. We may well see that with him before the end of the season. Obviously, you've got the likes of Chido Obi, who people want to see get a run. I think that makes a lot of sense with the amount of goals he scored in the academy since he's moved from Arsenal. And with the problems we've been having up front, whether he'd get the supply is interesting too, because that would really show us something. If Chido Obi came in and suddenly starts scoring the goals and not much is really changing the positions around him, that would say an awful lot about Xerxes and Højlund. So I think in that instance, the pressure would be more on those two than on the young player in this case. Maybe if Shea Lacey hadn't have had the injury issues he's had this season, he might be closer to getting into the first team. There's other names that have been bandied about that have done quite well. I know Academy Scoop have been a big sort of follower of, or champion is a better word, champion of Jack Moorhouse since he's come back from injury as well. He's been playing really well in the academy too. We've got quite a few guys who Gabriel Biancheri, another one who's been injured recently, but has been doing really well at that level. We've got a number of young players who could come in and potentially have a go, and we're not going to get a better chance than this really to have not much in the league in particular, to have nothing on the line and to just see how they cope in that environment. They don't have to have a prolonged run. Give them a taste of the first team football. Give them some minutes. They can go back into the academy then. But you can just see how they handle it. See how they handle the moment and the pressure. Because next season, if we are where we want to be and actually competing for something in the league, that's not as easy a situation to bring a young player into. Lastly, today, I think it's quite an obvious yes to this question, but can Cupra save our season? We're through into the next round of the FA Cup via Harry Maguire's very onside goal. The Europa League, we finished with a bit of a flourish, finished quite highly in third after a few draws at the start. We've got to go far. We've got to try and do something just so that we've got something to look forward to this season. If we end up out the Cups, then it really is a limping on to the summer sort of situation, especially if we don't start playing youngsters and have them to sort of watch and have something to give us some kind of encouragement of any sort. But yeah, we have to go far. I mean, we really should be winning the Europa League. We've seen from this team that we could play anyone and lose at home. Our home performances have been so dire. I mean, we nearly lost to Southampton at home, which says it all really. This can't carry on. I think there's a lot of pressure on at Spurs at the moment because similarly they've had an awful season. They've had a lot of injuries, to be fair, but there's talk that maybe this is the time that Ange moves on, just to, even if you get someone in temporarily, just to give them a boost until the end of the season, and maybe they can go on and win that trophy, because they're probably up there with ourselves and what Lazio and Bilbao has been among the favourites to win that. And really, if you're looking at those other names, we should be definitely winning that. But then you look at how our season's gone, and you know that's not the case. And the FA Cup too, with the amount of big teams that have already gone out of the competition. Fulham's not a terrible draw at home, but any home game at the moment seems to be a problem for us. But I'm happy with Fulham. The teams I really didn't want to face myself were Bournemouth, Palace and Brighton, because we have one too many bogey teams at the moment, and they're definitely amongst them. I'd rather have played City than those, but Fulham's not too bad. Hopefully, we can kick on. We beat City in the final last season, beat them in the league this year, so we know if we come up against them, that shouldn't worry us too much. So it won't happen, but realistically, we should be going to win both those cups this year. I don't think one cup victory saves our season. When the league performance is this bad, it can't save the season. It's an awful season. The Europa League obviously is the preference of the two because it gives us Champions League. Whether we're ready for that next season or not is a different question for a different day. And the FA Cup gives us European football too. And they're probably going to be our two routes to European football. I used to be of the mindset that I would rather not be in the Europa League or Conference League if we couldn't be in the Champions League. But I love watching United even when we're terrible for some bizarre, strange reason. And I want to see us in those competitions to just let the team evolve, to watch their story, to watch them grow. And obviously, if we're not in Europe next season, it's going to be a very sort of limited schedule for us. Maybe that would work though. Maybe Amroim having a season of getting them on the training pitch and instilling his philosophy and way of playing into them. Maybe that's for the best. But what I would say is this: a lot of teams, when they don't have European commitments, can do well. We've seen it with Newcastle. We've seen it with Forest this season, who've surprised everybody. But then you add a European campaign into the mix. Just look at Villa in the Champions League. They're still doing well in the league, but it is a drop-off from last year because it's so hard to maintain the two. So even if next year you go, we're not in any competitions, we have Amorim, we get sort of, second, third or fourth, have a great season, everyone's like, here we go. The next season doesn't necessarily mean we're going to kick on from there because you get back in European competition and suddenly you're having to rotate a bit more, you're probably going to deal with more injuries and you lose your momentum. So the better thing is manage the two from the start. If we can get back into Europe next year, I think it will be more beneficial. Short term, Amroim might be able to refine things, but then you have the new task of being able to juggle both. I think just trying to learn how to juggle them as you go along, because if you want to be a serious team competing for the biggest trophies and the best trophies, you're going to be in multiple competitions, you're going to be in Europe, and you need to find a way to handle that. Having a great season, having a really good season whilst you're not in Europe, fair play, brilliant, but that doesn't correlate, I think, these days in the current Premier League landscape with how competitive and how strong teams are. I don't think that correlates to having a successful season the next when you're having to fight on an additional front to just the league and the domestic cup competitions.